Welcome back to the Marketplace. This is your home for everything that's happening during the NBL free agency period. All the latest signings, all the rumours. This is where you need to be with the Marketplace and, of course, nbl.com.au. Very special edition today, a Perth Wildcats-centric edition of the Marketplace. To do that, we start, of course, with Dech. Ruck, great to see you.
Good to see you, Jack, and the Perth Wildcats. I like what they're doing. They're doing some things on the low that are very impressive at the moment.
And if we're going to talk Perth Wildcats, we go to the number one man. He knows this team back to front. He calls them each and every week. He covers them every day during the news cycle. Lachy Reid, welcome to the Marketplace, Lachy.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack. How long's the Marketplace been going? Because this is my first appearance. I've been waiting. I sit here at this desk every day thinking they're going to ring, but this has finally happened, so I'm very excited.
Well, today's your day, so, you better be good is all I'm going to say. Hey, Lock, we'll talk a little bit later in this episode from a Wildcats point of view about the kind of temperature of the water in Perth. But let's start with the news. The latest today is that Lat Mayen has signed with the Perth Wildcats, a very versatile guy who can fit into a number of spots.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good player, Lat Mayen. We look forward to seeing him over here in the West. I think the Cats had a real crack at him last year, missed out, and he stayed at Adelaide. So nice to get him here. He'll be a backup surely in the 3-4 spot for the Perth Wildcats, who have still got Windler and Doolittle in their team. So a good signing, and I know Danny Mills was very keen to get some of the Sudanese boys into this lineup, and the Perth Rhinos over here, a great organisation that get a lot of Sudanese boys playing basketball, and Sunday Dech, which I'm sure you'll mention in a moment, is one of those as well. So a good contingent of those boys to strengthen the sort of depth of the Perth Wildcats for next season.
Dech, it's been an interesting kind of 12-month journey for Lat Mayen, if you want to call it that. Really started to show his wares at Cairns, goes to Adelaide. It just didn't really fit for a number of reasons. Do you like the Perth fit?
I love it. And I'm surprised that Adelaide have been so readily unwilling to kind of continue the relationship. Lat Mayen is a very unique player, especially if he can kind of maintain his health. Remember, up in Cairns, he had a really great start to the season a couple of years ago under Adam Ford. Shot the ball well, was defending well, didn't back down from any challenges he took, even though he was playing undersized at the position. He goes down to Adelaide again, gets off to a nice start, gets an injury, and loses his rhythm, obviously falls out of the rotation, isn't able to provide sort of the input that they were looking for. But, Jack, I have to look past his performance and look at the potential. And from the Perth Wildcats perspective, this is what they need. This is exactly the type of player they need. Again, he's not a great three-point shooter, but he is a perimeter threat. He's athletic, he's long, and I believe he has a lot of really good basketball in front of him.
Playing in the off-season in the NBL 1 Central competition, so keeping fit and keeping in good form. Lachy, you mentioned Sunday Dech. There's something that just feels right, I think, about Sunday returning to the Wildcats.
Yeah, it's a match made in heaven, isn't it? I mean, a former championship winner, won 2 titles, played under Damien Martin in the early years, and now comes back home after several years in Adelaide. Like his leadership, like his poise, I think the Wildcats have missed that over the last couple of years. I actually expect him to maybe step into that captaincy role down the track. You've got Jesse Wagstaff maybe one more year, and you would think with Sunday signing a 3-year deal, that's the vision for the Perth Wildcats. Someone who is homegrown talent, does all the right things on and off the court, and can be a captain in the making for sure.
Well, one of the things I really liked about Sunday, despite his injury problems also last season, was that when he came back late in the season for Adelaide, he changed the way that team looked. He added toughness, he added sensibility, and just that composure of being a championship winner. Now, he won those championships as a much younger player and didn't have a major impact or influence in those banners getting hung, but nevertheless, he has that type he has that awareness, he has that feel inside of him. And I think it's great, again, that the Wildcats understand his value and have brought him back. And again, he was a guy who was wanted by a number of NBL clubs. So good on Sunday Dech for getting back to where I think he truly belongs.
And the other side to that, Dech, is obviously the defensive end of the floor, which we know under John Riley, we know that Perth can score. There's been no question there. but it's the other end of the floor that perhaps needed a bit of work.
Well, this is interesting because I'm curious to see how John really attacks this season from a style of play. He loses one of the greatest offensive players in NBL history in Bryce Cotton, a guy who shot at 40+% from the three, averaged 28 last season. He drove a lot of their offense from the perimeter, but they were poor defensively, and Bryce was a part of the reason why they were no good, but he wasn't the primary reason, and you can forgive him for all the work he did offensively. But now with Lat Mayen, who is a competent defensive player, Sunday Dech, as you said, he's the type of guy who I believe still may have some defensive player of the year type play left in him. So maybe John really realizes now, okay, this offensively is going to look different. So I need to bolster my team on the defensive end.
I was going to jump in there, Jack, because maybe it is, you're right, Derek, a change in their DNA, just a touch, and it's probably a forced change to their DNA. I mean, Bryce, we know, was a great scorer, so they went with the scoring. They were happy to score, 100, 115 points per game, but they also got caught out in really important games. Bateman put 50 on them. Golding put several hundred points on them, and they just had no player to go with those types of players in crucial games. So maybe just they'll woo back to, say, 95 points per game, but be better defensively. I like the change. It's going to be a little different maybe for John Rillie. Has he got that DNA, that defensive DNA in him to coach this team? I mean, if you look at it now, you would think at the moment it's going to be an import point guard. Dech maybe in the two, unless they get somebody else from outside. Windler's a handy defender. Doolittle's a good defender. They'll have to go a marquee centre, you'd have to think. And then I'm told Aquera probably will stay now. He's had some interest in other clubs around, Brisbane in particular, but I think Aquera will start the Perth Wildcats. So they've got a little rim protection there as well. So things are falling into place, but the point guard position and the marquee position are the keys, and what type of player they need is going to be really crucial to whether they can contend next season.
Yeah, Derek, if you're looking at this lineup, and we shouldn't forget, as Lockie said, that Dylan Windler re-signed last week as well, so great news for him. Just on Windler, he kind of feels like the sort of guy to both of you that will be better for having been in the league for a season. Would that be fair?
I thought he was really, really good. He had a net rating of +13, I believe, this season, which is elite. He shot the ball spectacularly well. And again, the only thing that ever lets him down is his physical well-being. But it looked like he got on top of that at the end of the year. And as you said, Jack, having that 1 year behind him, we've seen from so many cases of where guys are so much better in their second season. And being with Bryce Cotton and playing with Bryce Cotton, there's a big burden there. There's a lot to learn in how to play with him and find your space and make sure that Bryce gets his. It's a huge shadow to have to perform under. Now with Bryce gone, I think everybody, including John Rillie, gets a chance to show, okay, now let's see what we can do independent of Bryce. Keeping in mind, though, there could be the possibility one day, Lockie, that Bryce does, in fact, return.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you would think maybe a couple of years, maybe 2-3 years, and maybe Bryce thinks, yep, it's time for me to come back home to the Perth Wildcats. Cats would welcome him, no doubt about it. But look, it was a bad situation in the end to lose Bryce. I mean, so disappointing for Wildcats fans, everyone that's followed him, and even the NBL. You would think he stays overseas. But sometimes forced change is good, and they'll be a very different team. They won't rely on one man and try and build a team around him. We saw the Illawarra Hawks with just a rock-solid lineup. There was no absolute superstar in that team. They got the job done. So maybe Perth's thinking is just a little different now. We've lost Bryce. Derek, time to do just something a little different. Maybe an old Wildcats where, that 2014 team, aside from Ennis, they weren't star-studded. They just put together a really good team.
Well, Jack, I can only imagine how the Red Army must feel, though, knowing that Bryce isn't coming back and then having to watch the clips of him play in Puerto Rico. It makes me feel a bit sad. I can imagine how dejected they are over there. How are they adjusting? Like, what's the vibe in the street, Lockie, over there?
Look, I think it was expected, Derek. I mean, most people in basketball around Australia was thinking that Bryce Cotton was going to leave. Now, the actual announcement via Instagram was heartbreaking for a lot of them. And if I put my Wildcats hat on, you're sitting there going, oh, that's it. You know, Perth, we're never going to win another title. It's over. You may as well close the club down. But then a couple of days later, you turn around and go, well, good on him. He gave us 8 great seasons. Yeah. Time for him to enjoy himself, make a little bit of money, do something different. And as you said, maybe come back to the Perth Wildcats at the end. I think Perth fans are fine with it, just as long as Melbourne United don't steal him and he plays for Melbourne United next season, because that would cause World War III.
If that happened, just as well there's a nullarbor between Victoria and Western Australia, because otherwise it would be a genuine war. Hey, we talk about what's next, and I think that's a good point that you made, Lockie, that there's a feeling now amongst the Red Army that, yes, they want to see a couple of big names land, but they are seeing the blue sky out of all of this. So with that said, how important is it for them next to land that marquee 5?
Yeah, they've got to get the Aussie marquee 5 or a marquee 5. Joe Lawala-Chul is one name that's been thrown up. Yanni Wetzel as well. If you get JLA, all of a sudden Perth comes alight, because you start thinking, no, he's not Bryce Cotton. He's not going to score you 40, 50 points and create all sorts of havoc. But underneath the basket, he is an enforcer. We saw him do that for Melbourne United. He was a crucial part of the championship team for them. And a Perth link, a Perth boy. So getting someone like that back is going to be enormous. So they'll be chasing him hard. They'll have to pay overs for him. I'm told he's pretty settled overseas, but money talks. So I would say he is number 1 target right now. I don't think they're too stressed about the import situation at the moment, because I think they're sitting back going, okay, let's try and land this marquee Aussie, and then we'll think about what sort of player we need to put in the point guard position. So I'm going hard after JLA. Wetzel's also an option, but in the end, get that checkbook out and try and compete with the others.
Hey, Jack, you said when they look up at the sky, they better find some type of creator, some type of playmaker, because they need a provider right now. Lat Mayen isn't a guy that's going to create his own. Sunday hasn't been good in that respect either. Windler's another guy who plays off of other guys' brilliance and creativity. So I think the Wildcats realistically need 2 playmakers. One has to be elite and the other has to be more of a supplementary type.
So you're talking, I mean, Elijah Pepper's there, and Elijah Pepper's averaging about 1,000 in NBL 1 West right now. He's just putting up enormous numbers. But do you think they need someone supplementary to that, Derek, like a backup point guard who is a pass-first type guy?
So if they go out and get that elite playmaker, point guard import that we alluded to previously, they still need someone else, because there will be times, and Perth are trying to win championships. So you've got to consider, how's it going to look in semifinal games? How's it going to look at Game 3 at John Cain Arena? Who can get out there and make plays and help the other marquee guys perform well? And, you know, it looks like they're going to lose Henschel. I don't know what the latest is there, but he was a guy that was starting to come into his own. He's the type of guy that can make plays on his own, get buckets, create for others. And I think that's a necessary replacement also.
I jump in there, Jack, because I agree, Derek. I mean, we talk about Cotton and it's a massive loss, but Benny Henschel's a crucial loss for him, because he's an Aussie, he's a local boy, and he was just taking that rise through the ranks. You know, didn't get a lot of minutes last year, then started actually in the team as their point guard. This next season coming up was going to be his breakout year. No Bryce Cotton. He could have probably slipped into the 2 spot and started scoring a lot more. So he's a massive loss for them. And I'm a little surprised, and I know he had an injury-riddled year, but I'm a little surprised that maybe Ty Webster hasn't received some sort of interest from the Wildcats. I'm told that no offer has been put to him at this stage. I know he was injury-prone. He seemed to be the coach's pet. And as a backup, even point guard, just to run the show, where you can move maybe your import point into the 2 spot and be a bit more adjustable, he would have been a really good backup. So it'll be interesting. Maybe they change their mind once they set the team up. But I am fascinated a touch, because I think Ty coming off the bench would still be a really good player for them, providing the energy that they need each and every week.
You like that, Derek?
I do. Again, the health worries me. And I just think what value were they receiving from Ty Webster over the past couple of seasons? Yes, when he was out there and when he was healthy, he did a really good job. He provided energy, pushes the ball, and I thought he played really well off of Bryce. But I just don't know if you can trust the body anymore, Jack. Everybody has a time, and perhaps the role that the Wildcats would need Webster to play, maybe his body can't perform at that level any longer.
So let's just play this scenario out to finish up, you two. Let's assume that one of JLA or Yanni Wetzell lands as the marquee centre. And for those who haven't seen Yanni Wetzell in the last couple of years, he's a much better player now than what he was when we last saw him here in the NBL. He's been playing in Germany and putting up big numbers. So if they get that, they go to Summer League, assuming, and go shopping for an import point guard. If they can tick those two boxes, what do we think about this team? Is it a playoffs team? Is it a top 4 team? Is it a championship team?
I think it's a top 4 team, no doubt. You don't think it's a top 4 team, Lachy? Just a playoff?
Oh, no, I think it's a playoff team. Absolutely. I think you're right. You mentioned it. Windler will have a better second year. We saw what he could do in the semi-finals. If he can stay injury-free, then he becomes a crucial player. Doolittle will step up, no longer is he, Robin to Bryce the Batman. They've just got to nail the marquee spot, and then I don't think they'll be rushing into an import spot at this stage. They usually take a long time. Danny Mills seems to just sit and wait, and he'll go to the Summer League. They probably won't get that third import until closer to the season. If Derek Rucker was 20 years younger, I'd be going him. If Casper Ware was about 5 or 6 years younger, that's the type of player I'm going. Someone who's prepared to be defensive when he has to be, but then take over a game when he wants to. That's the type of player. If they're going that defensive mindset, if they're getting a little bit more defensive DNA in them, they need the point guard to also buy into that defensive setup. And a bloke like a Casper Ware, I know he's 35, so he's probably past it in that sort of sense, but a bloke like him who can do both is what they need. You're not going to replace Bryce Cotton. You're not going to get a guard that's going to score you 50 points in a game. So go and try and make your team.
It's interesting, right? And let's go back to Game 5 of the championship series where Illawarra absolutely pounded Melbourne United in the paint, scoring, I believe, 64 points in the paint off of 57 or something like that field goal attempts. Maybe Perth, and Jack, this gets back to your question before, because I prefer JLA over Wetzel. So say Perth are able to sign JLA. Now you've got this big man focus offensively that totally changes the DNA of your team. Now you look different offensively, but I think maybe the overall potency balance is better than the previous year. And also, if you're attacking the paint, you're able to get kick out threes, and it helps guys who haven't been excellent three-point shooters in the past, like a Mayen, like a Dech. It gets them better looks because there's collapsing defense and kickouts. And maybe that's the way. And also with improved defense, JLA has always been an underrated defender in this league. So there is some promise there. It just depends on whether or not Joe Lawala-Chul Jr. is willing to come back to Australia.
Well, for the Red Army, this episode is for you. And hopefully it might just calm things down slightly. We know that the Red Army are vocal on social media and in the comments, Locke, and I know that you've got a great relationship with a lot of them. They're a little bit edgy at the moment, but I feel like having heard some of this, they should feel better.
Oh, look, they're passionate, and that's what you want about the Red Army, and that's what you want as a fan base, don't you? You want passionate fans that, yes, they'll get angry when they lost Bryce Cotton. Yes, they'll get angry because KD goes to Sydney and all of a sudden Sydney look like an NBA team. But in the end, you've just got to have a little bit of patience. Danny Mills has found some imports over the years. He'll find another one, and they've got a heap of money. I could use a really bad word there. They've got a crap load of money to spend. I mean, Bryce and Keanu Pinder and even Henschel's cash would be high 1.8, 1.9, 2 million bucks. So they've got that to spend. So a little bit of patience, and I think they might be able to snare themselves 2 or 3 handy players.
Well, Jack, with that comment about Kendrick Davis, Lockie's bitter meter just blew up. Like, let that man do what he wants to do, firstly. y'all are fine. You'll be fine. You'll get someone. John really has great contacts, and you'll be able to find a very, very dynamic point guard.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Seriously, Jack. Kendrick Davis, he's never been to Perth. It's the most beautiful place in the world. He could have walked up and down Cottesloe Beach. I could have found him a house on Cottesloe overlooking the ocean and Rottnest. I mean, what does he think? He go to Sydney? Who wants to live in Sydney?
Hey, this is not an ad for Tourism WA, Lockie. You do that in your own time and with your own endorsements. Hey, great to have you on the show. Well overdue. I think you performed well. We might get you back another time.
Thanks, mate. Been fun.
Ruck, great to see you as always. Things are just starting to get to that stage now where we really can dive into these depth charts.
Oh yeah, the season will be here before we know it. Lockie, great job on your appearance rating. I give you an 8.3 out of 10. Good job.
And all three of us.
I will take that.
All three of us went to the same hairdresser in the lead up to today's show as well. Thanks for being with us on the Marketplace. We will catch you next time. Of course, this is where you need to be for all of the latest free agency news across the NBL.